disappearance of outdoorsman Gary Hinge stunned the nation when we shared his story. It captured the hearts and fears of millions, and we've had everyone from park rangers to paratroopers offer to help find his remains. And yes, you can trust that we are still following that story. Thanks to tips from viewers who also live in the area, we've made another stunning discovery. Just over a year after Gary went missing, in the late night hours of September 28, 2018, a young woman was found dead in her locked home off of Highway 50. Hours later, another woman would vanish along the same stretch of remote desert highway. Once I started looking into this, I realized all of this is part of a bigger mystery than I could have ever imagined, and it was unfolding right in front of us.
What is the address of your emergency? Hello? Hello? What is the address of your emergency? Hello? 911, is anybody there? If you can't speak, press the button on your phone. Dispatch to Unit 6.
Unit 6 to dispatch, go ahead.
I just had a non-verbal distress call for... I need another welfare check, please.
Copy. I just left the domestic in Echo Canyon. I'm about 7 minutes out en route now. This is Unit 6 to dispatch. I am here at the residence. No one is answering the door, but the bedroom lights at the rear of the residence are flashing. Now the porch lights are flashing. This is Unit 6. I'm going to request backup at this point. I don't know if this is an attempt at an SOS, but I'm going to attempt to enter the residence. The front door is locked. Unit 6 at dispatch. I need medical ASAP. I repeat, I need medical ASAP.
Copy. Dispatching medical.
I first heard about this when I was working in northern Nevada on a different story at the Hotel Nevada. And I was waiting for the elevator in the lobby, and it's an old hotel, so you know the elevator takes a while. And I noticed this woman is staring at me. And right when the doors open, she rushes over to me and she tells me, "I know who you are, and you have to do a story on what happened to that girl, Minerva." So we stepped aside, and I let the elevator doors close, and I listened to what she had to say. Turns out she was a former 911 dispatcher from the neighboring town of Cypress, Nevada, where this event had taken place. She rambled on for quite a bit, but what really caught my attention was when she said when her friend came to collect her belongings, they accidentally gave her all the paintings and tapes.
The night this all happened, it was only my second week living in Cyprus. I'd moved there just for this open EMT position. My old job, it was working for a private company, and it just didn't have the excitement that you think you're gonna get when you go to school to become an EMT and work on an ambulance. On paper, Cyprus is the perfect place for a guy like me. I love mountain biking, I love climbing, I love camping, I love hiking, but by the time the sun came up the next day, I was looking for another job in a new town.
After what happened to that missing hiker, we were watching it on TV, and, he had the video. As soon as my husband saw it, he said to me, "Oh my God, they're back."
In the ambulance on the way out there, we were talking about how weird it would be to live out there. It's so creepy and unsettling. As we pulled up, the scene was bizarre. The thing I remember the most is the position her body was in. So my buddy's working on the patient, and I go into the trailer to try to see what medication I can find, see if we can get a medical history on her, see how we can treat her better. And yeah, only way I could describe the feeling is that it felt like when I was still in training and we went to a call, and it was at a warehouse, and it was a stabbing victim. And the cops, they told us, all right, stay back a little, treat them, but the suspect is still at large. We're searching the warehouse currently. And I was just nonstop on edge, watching my back. That's the only way I could really describe that feeling. So I go in and I'm searching, and it was weird. It was like empty. I mean, I found some medication, but I was just thinking, like, who is this woman?
Everybody keeps talking about this one woman that was a student. And, I was assuming that, she was a high school student, but it turns out that she was in her 30s and she was taking a college course.
I had to track down this friend that the police just gave evidence to. And as I was doing that, I found out that Minerva goes by Minnie.
This all started when we were on a camping trip in upstate New York. The woman who ran the campgrounds, she ended up being a geologist. And the more she would talk about her work, you could just see Minnie's eyes light up. She became enthralled with everything that this woman was saying. This woman saw this and said, "This is great, you should take a class."
After the camping trip and meeting this woman that really inspired her, she started to take class at Brooklyn College, and she met a former student who told her about this semester in Cypress, Nevada.
The semester in Nevada was basically a program that worked with various colleges and universities and would bring students out to a town called Cypress, Nevada, where there was an actual working mine. And these students would work in the field with actual geologists.
At the time, Kathy was working as a nurse at the Beth Israel Hospital in New York City. She was working the night shift in the ER, and these are 12-hour shifts. So during the day, she was sleeping. But she wanted to let Minerva know that she was there for her, that she supported her in this decision to go to Cyprus. So they would send video messages back and forth to each other.
Anyway, New York misses you. Here, I'll show you where I am.
And it's through these videos that we are able to get a glimpse of Minnie in the last days of her life.
She gets to Cyprus and there's not a space for her there. Somewhere along the line, someone dropped the ball and they did not account for her. So there's literally not a space for her in the dorms. It's packed as it is. So their solution was to put her in this single wide trailer that the school were planning to convert it into offices at some point, but for the time being, they gave it to her as housing.
When she lived here in this trailer, that trailer was sitting on this cement slab. Where this slab sits used to be a full basement for that trailer. The mine came in and we filled it in, and we were planning on putting a new office sitting on that foundation.
Did investigators remove anything from the basement before you guys filled it in?
Not to my knowledge.
So shortly after, my husband and I took over the ranch, my father used to allow these hunters come hunt on our land. For years, they were hunting on our land. And what happened was apparently there was a hunter that really didn't know what he was doing when it came to hunting and shooting guns. And my husband was shot. Fortunately, he didn't kill him, so it was no longer okay with us. So I had to go to the hunters, to let them know that they can no longer hunt on our land anymore. And they were really, really pissed about it. They went and cut like one of my fences, and then there was a sheep pen where, the little gate that kept it closed was destroyed, so I called the police, and they told me though that they couldn't do anything until I get actual proof. There was this one night, my husband and I, went to bed early. We heard noises coming from down in the barn. So my husband, got the camera and said, okay, I'm going to get, the proof now. And he went out there, but they weren't there. And then all of a sudden he looked further up and he saw them running.
Can we possibly go look in the trailer?
No. It's sitting off to the side because it's getting ready for demolition and the company doesn't want anybody near it. At the time that she lived here, there was a gentleman that lived in the yellow house, but he has since left and the house now has become abandoned.
When I first moved into this area, there was a housing shortage. And I stayed in my car for a while, and one afternoon as I was on my way home from work, I happened to find this house. It's a little yellow house about 5 miles out of town. I found that it was empty and that it was livable, and I was able to find the owners, and I was able to rent the house from them. They helped me unload all my stuff I had in a trailer, and we spent most of the day getting that stuff moved in and get settled in, and by the time I got all done and everything, it was dark when they left. And as I had started settling into the house and sitting back and relaxing a little bit, I started getting a really funny feeling like there was something just out of place and I couldn't quite figure out what it was. One night I went to bed and I had fallen asleep. And all of a sudden my dog woke me up. He was just growling and snarling over at the front door. I got up and went over to the door, thought maybe somebody had broke down on the highway. I opened up the door and the dog was just sitting there barking and growling and really snarling and looking up like he was standing there looking at somebody. There was nobody there. Slowly worked his way out on the porch and out into the yard. He's just like he was chasing them off. And he's looking up and there was nobody there.
Hey girl, welcome to Nevada and my semi-furnished single unit / trailer. Yeah, so I was definitely excited not to have a roommate, and the curtains are closed because the neighbors are a little weird. So, let me show you the bedroom.
Watching the first video that she sends Kathy, I have to stop and think why she even was living in that trailer. It wasn't ready for anyone to be living in. I mean, construction was still happening. There's sheet plastic in the living room.
All right, girl, let me know what you think. Miss you. Love you. You're gonna have to visit soon. Talk to you soon. Alrighty, bye.
When she turns the camera to herself, you could just see she was beaming. I was able to relax. You know, she's fine. She's gonna be fine there.
What he told us that his reason why Minnie thought he was so weird,
and the curtains are closed because the neighbors are a little weird,
was pretty chilling.
And I just got into bed and I could start hearing this noise outside, and I sat up and listened for a moment and realized it was an owl and it was out in a tree. So I went out there and grabbed some rocks as I went around there to the side of the house where the tree was at, and started throwing rocks up there and started yelling a little bit and cussing at it. And I started hearing this noise coming down from up on the mountain. In a way, it sounded like a woman singing, but it wasn't quite a singing voice. It was just a real odd sound. It was sort of like be a high pitched and then low, and then just different sounds coming down, and just fade in and out and echoing, and I couldn't quite really tell where it was coming out because it just sounded like it was coming from different places. I get a phone call from my landlord, and he tells me there's going to be a lady who's going to move into the trailer next door to me, and then the next day this lady moves in, this geologist, and I go over there and welcomed her to the area, and while we were sitting there talking, I started telling her about this weird sound I heard coming down from the top of the hill there, and she was just sitting there looking at me like I flipped my lid, she just thought looking at me like I was totally crazy. Whenever I started getting this feeling that I was being watched, I would just start getting physically sick. I would get really nauseous, and it would just get worse and worse and worse as time went on.
Almost immediately, she starts to have these really odd physical symptoms.
Look, no hands. I got a tripod at the dollar store, and it's holding my fancy phone so that I can do fun stuff like open this wine and talk to you. My eyes are starting to bug me. I can't breathe at night. I keep waking up, and I'm just kind of foggy. I can't fall asleep. I can't wake up. When I lay down to go to sleep, I can hear my heart beating. And then when I was home earlier, there were some things that were not where I left them, and a couple of things that I just couldn't find.
Whatever was going on, her physical state started to deteriorate.
So I'm going to see a doctor in the next town tomorrow.
He recommended she go back to where she was staying in this trailer and possibly look for black mold.
It didn't even occur to me, but it's the perfect explanation for all of her symptoms and everything. And I said, you really need to go look for this right now, like inspect your trailer right now.
She goes back to her trailer, and while she's looking for this black mold, she finds this canvas bag.
At the time, it wasn't really a big deal because we were way more focused on her health at that point. So I said, okay, fine, send me some pictures of it later, but let's keep inspecting your place. And tore the place apart, and there was no mold.
This is the bag that police would end up giving Kathy, thinking it was part of Minnie's belongings. And the contents in this bag? Kathy is devastated over the loss of her best friend, which is actually more of a sister to her. She knew something had to be done. That's when she decided to grab Minnie's belongings.
I went through it just to see if there was anything that could help us.
And she found the canvas bag. And inside, she finds a really old tape and some really bizarre paintings. And she also found her phone. Kathy and Minnie are both avid podcast listeners, and they especially love this one where the host always tells their listeners to make an If I Go Missing folder. And basically what's in this folder is, your passcodes, your social security number, anything that someone would need to basically crack open your life. And you entrust it to one person. And because of this, Kathy has Minnie's cell phone passcode, so she's able to open her phone.
Safety checklist verification process. There are 3 levels of control, and each requires a verification process to be performed by either an instructor, a supervisor, or manager. For ongoing improvements. There are specific tools for the
And then you slowly start to hear Minnie breathing. She's not snoring yet, but it's like this deep sleep breathing.
You could hear something else going on in the background. thought, maybe, is she sleepwalking? Is that what's happening here? There's someone talking. It's a man's voice. I can't really make out what he's saying, but it's definitely a man talking. And she's asleep through all of it. You know, after listening to all of these recordings, they really got under my skin and into my head. You know, I couldn't sleep that night because they were playing over and over in my head. I didn't go to work the next day. And then Robbie came home with the tape transfer.
One for you.
Right from the start, you could tell that this thing was dark. This person's voice is unhinged. And the minute I realized that it was filmed inside of the trailer itself, my stomach just dropped.
discharge in the wall. Count. Your eyes drop. They will hit the top. Moving up and down again. With no discharge in the wall. We can dig out a weapon in weariness, but not the chronic nitrogen. Moving up and down again. With no discharge in the wall. Take so bad by leading of the company. But night, long strings of 40,000 million boots. Moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the wall. I have marched 6 weeks in military fire. It is not fire. There looks like anything but boots. Moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the wall.
They tore the porch down and removed the trailer from its foundation and where this basement was located right after Minnie died and right before Kathy realized what was on this tape.
She was getting back, but I am pretty sure that I might be the first Korean to ever move to or live in or visit Cypress, Nevada. The guy at the gas station asked me if I was Oriental. Then one of those guys in my class, he was sweet. He was trying to be sweet. He said that I look like a China doll. So, right. Well, everyone's really sweet. It's not like racist or anything. It's just kind of like, I don't know, long stares. All right. Talk to you later. Love you. Bye.
From 1993 until it was acquired by the mine, it was rented out to so many different people, and those records are pretty much non-existent because everything was kind of done under the table. Basically, this trailer was just a revolving door.
It's out here somewhere. I've seen it out here.
Most of what we see on this video has no context because the tape itself is actually so badly damaged and warped that even though we can hear the person that made the video, we can't actually hear like the cadence of their voice and what they really sound like. The woman in the pink sweatshirt has been identified as Charity Henderson. She went missing in the late 90s.
Okay, stop with that thing. It's so weird. Hello? Acting funny. Not talking. Hello?
There are other victims on this tape, but we never get a clear look at their faces.
You know, back when I was a little girl, you know, I was sleeping in my bed and it was late at night. And I heard my parents, like, you know, shouting. And I cracked open the door and I looked, you know, and there was my dad with the shotgun and my mom, and they were staring out the window and they were yelling. And I overheard, you know, my mom say, you know, what kind of people would be like walking out this far? And my dad said, I don't think those are people.
I was checking out my security footage from my security system, and I had seen this guy come walking down from up behind my house down toward this lady's house. This is right about the time that before she had passed away, and I figured that maybe it had something to do with her passing away.
That's what I'm talking about. Do you hear that? So, on top of everything else, there's a critter, some kind of animal in my walls. that I can hear crackling when I'm laying down for months trying to fall asleep. There's now this animal.
I did. I called them right away and I came up and they looked at it and I showed them.
The only cause of death they could come up with was hyperthermia. The officer that arrived at her trailer said that it was so hot in there that it was like the furnace was just out of control. And so he had to take her outside and wait for the medical responders to arrive because he couldn't even stand to wait inside. It was just unbearable. It's a shame this didn't happen in the next county over because the White Pine County Sheriff's Department, they would have handled it properly.
This highway here is, you've heard of the loneliest road in America. You could literally see no car for 200 miles. 5 miles up this canyon is the entrance to Cypress, the town, right below the mine. So the highway here heads down. 5 miles down the road splits. Left goes town of Copper Flat, about 20 miles out. Or you can go right and go down about 2 hours to Caliani. If you pass Caliani, you're taking the scenic route to Vegas. The Brasher girl was coming from Vegas through Caliani to Cypress.
Our ranch is right off the highway. It's about 30 minutes outside of Cypress. That night, my husband and I were home and we were waiting for our daughter to get home from Las Vegas. We were watching our grandson, Mason. From Las Vegas to our ranch is about a 4-hour drive. Well, you've got cell service for the first half up to about Blacktop. But once you pass Blacktop, there is nothing. So we have this family policy. You stop the car and you call home at Blacktop. That way, we know that if you're not home within 2 hours, we got to go out and look for you.
When Emiliana's mother was younger, she also broke down in a similar area. And when they were in the car waiting for her grandfather to show up, this creepy old guy came by the car and was kind of harassing them and didn't leave until her grandfather actually came.
There just wasn't something right about him. And he just looked at us with this kind of shit-eating grin and went, pow.
And so Emiliana's mother has kind of a rule that if you ever break down on this part of the highway, you are not to remain in your car. You go off into the dark, you hide, you watch your car, and when you see that the person showing up to your car is someone that you know and is there for you, then you can get out and you can go to them, but not until then.
So that night, she reached Blacktop and called us in right about midnight. A little over an hour later, she called us and said that she'd broken down. She'd broken down right around the area of Lehman Summit. She knew the area really well because, well, it was this area that when she was little, we used to take all the kids out there to this mining camp. It was right by there. So she knew that if she just hiked right up the mountain, she could get service and call us. I told her, you'll know it's Dad because he's going to be flashing his light, and then you can come on out of the trees. Right after my husband left, I called it into the police so they'd know that she was up there and he was looking for her. We have a police scanner at the ranch, so I sat right next to that thing for the next hour at least. Of course, I was a little anxious, but I wasn't too worried until they'd found her car, but not her, and they were starting to search for her. Just about daybreak, I saw the patrol car come up the dirt road, and this police officer gets out and asks me if I knew how to access Sam's cell phone and if I'd come down to the station. You know, eventually they found her dash cam was rolling the whole time.
And that is not my dad. This car has turned around 3 times to look at my car.
Where are you going?
Later that night after my shift ended, I texted my girlfriend at the time to see if she was available because it was late. And so we're talking and can't even talk for more than 5 minutes. And my boss calls and he says he needs me back right away. A car got found and the woman who was supposed to be driving that car was missing, and it was an all hands on deck situation. My buddy Ron, he was just saying she probably got dragged off by a mountain lion and we'd be just searching for a body. There's only 4 of us, but we can't wait any longer. We have to start the search. So we basically just start at her car and spread out. The police tipped us off that her mom told them that she might be hiding. So I found a patch of trees, headed in that direction because it looked like a good hiding spot to me.
Hello? Emiliana! If you're out here, we're looking for you. I'm with the volunteer fire department. Emiliana! I'm with the volunteer fire department. Emiliana! Ron? Hello?
Hey Ron, where are you guys at?
By the time I made my way out of there, feeling around in the dark, making my way to the door, they were starting to get there. We searched everywhere for that poor woman. We didn't find her.
This is just something that we're left with and that we have to live with, just questions. And I'm never going to stop trying to find out the truth of what happened to her.
We're asked almost weekly about the influencers that have so-called discovered the cabin that Gary disappeared at, and that story is still developing, and we promise that we will bring that story to you when it is ready to be presented.
¿Qué onda, Internet? Mi nombre es Oscar y este es mi primer vlog. Y lo empecé porque estoy al punto de ir a la aventura más grande de mi vida. Voy a los Estados Unidos, al estado de Nevada. He ahorrado bastante dinero para estar ahí por 30 días. Y voy a la última locación de Gary Hinge. Por cierto, yo sé que muchos de ustedes han estado buscando esa cabaña. Pero yo sé algo que ustedes no saben.